Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Let's see this all working. There's here. Hello, Ivan, Even. I say your name like Ivan, as in like over. Ivan Tony. Am I saying that correctly? Is it Ivan or is it Even? But hello. Thanks for. You're always the first one to put in the chat, I feel. So thanks for the support. And I'm also looking forward to this analysis because it's going to be more on England than it is on Chelsea. So a little bit of a different breakdown from today. We're going to be speaking about their game against Switzerland the other day, and then a little bit about the Netherlands game and how that could look in that matchup. We'll put that on screen for a second whilst I just quickly make sure this is all running smoothly. Hello, Ninja Gecko. You're also one that I always recognise in here. You and Ivan, Even or Ivan. Hello, hello. Right, cool. So I'm going to say from the get-go that we will break down the shape on screen first, then we'll speak about how it could look against the Netherlands and how they sort of set up and how I think they're going to set up. For the Switzerland game and the analysis on that, I would actually say go to my Twitter where I've actually got some like images that I've pre-analyzed essentially. I've got them on screen now, but in terms of sharing them, probably easier to leave it to go to my Twitter, which I'll post them again tonight, probably with some analysis based on the actual photos I've got. But we'll speak about the shape and how it sort of lined up against Switzerland first. So from the get-go, we'll just start like this. Switzerland obviously set up pretty much in that same sort of shape. So sort of that 5-2-2-1 with the two inside forwards, the pivot. So you got Xhaka and Freuler in the middle. And it's somewhat similar like this. Some people, you could make the argument that it was a bit of a not a full-on, fully fledged back five in the sense it was maybe just Saka had a bit more defensive responsibility, maybe you could say. But I do think it was more or less set out like this. And the good thing with this is with Saka is on the go you can sort of change his role. He can sort of play as that wing back, but of course he is an auxiliary right winger. So having him there, you can sort of, based on the temperament of the game and where you want to take it, you can basically alter it without actually taking him off the pitch because he can do both, which is a key tool to have. And Saka was absolutely phenomenal the other day. One of, if not the best player on the pitch. So big props to him, and he has a massive, massive part to play in this side, especially for the rest of the tournament. I think he'll be key because part of the discussion today is going to be based on whether you think England. That's come up as nothing, Ninja Gecko. I don't know if that was supposed to be a message, but there's nothing coming up for that for me. So if you try to send that again, or let me know if that was an accident. But yeah, I think part of the discussion today we're going to be having with England is more so to do with, do you think they're going to play the same shape again? And like I say, a big part of this, so you can see who I've got along the top here. I think they're probably the most important players to sort of discuss. I think the ones down this side, as much as I'd love Gordon to play, don't think he's going to now. Gallagher, I think they've sort of settled on Mainu, and I think it's the right decision for this team and how we're playing. I think Mainu's been really good. I think the ones up here are more likely to be getting minutes, and the decisions are sort of in this line here. Trent, I think the decision's sort of been made for him. He was started there. He's not going to start as this right back, especially if we're in the back four. I don't think he will against Netherlands, against Gakpo. And again, I think Saka's too good. Like, again, you could start Saka at left wing back, Trent at right wing back. I feel like Trent is more likely now to come from the bench. And I don't necessarily mind that against Netherlands. I probably would have started him against Switzerland, but it worked out. So fair enough. I probably would have started Saka on the left, Trent on the right. But Trippier, he actually had a good game, I thought, against Switzerland. So it has to be said. Tony, obviously, there's the shouts for Kane out of this team. Again, I thought he was pretty poor the other day. But he's Harry Kane. And as much as I don't really like to say it, he is kind of undroppable at this point of the tournament, especially. Some people saying that he might have a knock and that might be playing part. He's going to start. So Tony, again, he's one of those ones that's going to come from the bench. So similar to Trent, put him sort of there. Eze, again, I think he's one to mention in the sense of coming from the bench. He's looked quite good, adds a different dynamic. actually finds himself sometimes in this like left wing back role. So obviously late in games, he's probably very attacking, and then later in those like extra time periods, he does find himself a bit deeper. But he's been good off the bench. I've been happy with Eze off the bench. These are probably the three standout decisions that you've got to make. And of course, we'll talk about Cole Palmer first, okay? Because obviously he's Chelsea, and this is where like some people believe it's biased. Now we'll actually put it out there, and I know because again I stream a lot about Chelsea, so a lot of people in this stream are going to be Chelsea fans or at least like frequent viewers of Chelsea streams. I actually before now I wouldn't have started Palmer. I actually was fine with sort of the way it was setting up. Bellingham and Foden for me are undroppable. Palmer's in the form of his life, but I wouldn't have dropped them. Again, you could have made a point in the like third group game onwards for like Foden had a few bad games in a row. Bellingham had a few in a row, but again, he's had some very decisive moments. And I think it'd be very silly to take Bellingham out now. And even with Foden, I think he's doing enough. Like I think he's actually looked better in some games lately, so I wouldn't be taking him out either. So Palmer's the choice. And again, I think as long as you're willing to be brave with Palmer from the bench, then I don't mind it because you can bring him in and he's going to make you know what you're going to get from Palmer. You know you're going to get sort of that. He's a bit braver on the ball, especially has been at this tournament. Not afraid to sort of play those balls between the lines and actually make things happen on the go and gets closer to goal again. He was sort of finding himself in and around these areas in late and extra time. So this is the sort of area you want Palmer to be affecting the game, and I think he does that well from the bench. So as much as there's a massive case for him to be starting over the likes of Foden, I don't think he will. So he's 1-to-1 for the bench as well. So we're going to put him over here, which brings us to Shaw and Konsa, who I think are the two massive decisions in this game week. And I'm going to quickly read this first. Well, I'm a Chelsea fan, but first and foremost a fan of the game of football, so I love everything football related, especially on that more analytical and tactical side of the game. And yes, that's why I want to sort of branch out and do a bit of everything as well. Obviously, cover everything Chelsea, and then in this time in between doing multiple Chelsea videos a week and streams, then we can do other games, other streams, other squad builds, other player analysis videos, and things like that about everyone. And England's a good place to start because it's the other massive part of my fanhood in football, obviously with Chelsea, and then with England, and especially now we're in the semi-final. Good time to talk about it in quite a big matchup against the Netherlands. I'm quite excited to see how both teams sort of go head to head in that sense because I think it's going to be a very interesting one, and we're going to speak about why I think it's going to be an interesting one. But I'll get onto that in a minute. Luke Shaw, big decision because he's basically come out now and said he can play 90 minutes. Thanks to Southgate and the medical staff, that was his words. If he's ready, and he thinks he's ready, and it's getting to the point now where it's end of the tournament, I don't see the harm in starting like this. I really don't. For 60 minutes, and if he gets injured, then you have Trippier to come on. And Trippier was, like I said, he was better the other day. But I think I'd rather do it that way than have Trippier start, Shaw come on at 60, chasing a game, and then it also ends up that like if Shaw gets a twist there. So yeah, like you say, if Shaw is fit, he has to start, and I agree. I think if Shaw is fit, I think you take that punt. Trippier is the one that unfortunately misses out, but again, he's had a massive part to play in this tournament already. I think his best game was actually against Switzerland. And again, he's important from the bench. Like Southgate even said the other day, he's a good talker. He got kind of a, like taking the mick out of for that sort of statement. But it's not a bad thing to have on the bench. And in your, like, if we go 1-0 up, this is the sort of player you want to be bringing on with 20, 15 minutes to go. So I think that's a good thing to speak about is Luke Shaw starting, Trippier coming from the bench. So let's say that this happens and you get that from Luke Shaw. I think that's a very big talking point. Like you say, if he's fit, he has to start. The other big talking point, because I think he was absolutely excellent the other day, is Ezri Konsa. And why this is a big talking point is because Stones, I don't actually think he's had the best tournament, but you know he's going to start and he does offer you that progressive passing through the lines from that central centre-back spot. So he's in. Walker, again, leadership, experience, and just that like recovery pace and sort of like 1v1 defensive ability that you want to leave him on one of their best attackers. Again, he's going to start. And he was actually very aggressive and good the other day in his role, I thought. So yeah, he's another one. And then you have Gurhey, who for me has been one of the better players this tournament for us. So you're left with that decision. Do you go back to Gurhey? Or do you stick with Ezri Konsa because it worked? And again, I thought Ezri Konsa was excellent, but I think Gurhey's done enough to come straight back into the side. And that is very harsh on Konsa because he was very good against Switzerland in arguably our best, well, not arguably, I think it's quite clearly our best game this tournament. Which leaves you with this. And yes, it leaves you with no Konsa, who's good, no Palmer, who's changed the game every time he comes on. But that's sort of the reason I don't mind him coming from the bench because I think it's a brave thing to do. Alex is in the stream. Hello, Alex. This is Euro Expert. If you don't follow him on Twitter already, great account. And yes, back to Gurley, I agree. That's what I would do. So it sort of leaves us in this predicament of like I say, some tough decisions have to be made, but it still only is one change with Trippier coming to the bench and Shorten. I would not be surprised if it still starts like this, unchanged, or like unchanged to an obviously Gurhey and Konsa being like a change as well, actually. So 2 changes if it is Shaw. And that's both on this left side. So that's quite important that it'd be a completely different left side, not even one that we've seen the entire tournament in Gurhey and Shaw. So that's another interesting thing to sort of take into account when we're talking about Netherlands and how we think they're going to line up and how we think things are going to go from there. Meta Football TV, evening. The problem with England is that they don't generate enough football. Too many ball progressors, not enough clinical passes. Yeah, in the starting 11, I kind of agree. Again, you have Trent when he comes on from right back to do that. I actually think the last few games, Rice has been much better at playing between the lines. I think he's actually been, again, it's not that I never thought Rice could do it. It was more so that the intent wasn't quite there with him, but he has been doing it, I think, a lot more in the last 2 games. Again, Stones is starting to find those balls as well. And of course, this is another reason why I don't mind Palmer coming from the bench, because he generates in that manner. Because again, he's braver with his passes between the lines. He's willing to play that defense splitter, even if like it doesn't come off. He's willing to sort of make that risk. Whereas it seems like it's gotten into the head lately of Foden. And again, I do think he's got better. It seems like he's becoming a slightly less risky under Southgate. And again, I think Kane, like often you started sort of seeing this. Dropping in, and Bellingham was doing a good job at sort of managing his runs as Kane dropped in. But even Kane's passing this tournament has not been as good as we're used to. Obviously, his long switch, he's had a few that have looked quite good in that sense, but nothing too intricate. Would you sub Kane for Tony? Obviously, unlikely. But I think no, Tony is insane at pens. Yeah. Give Southgate more confidence to bring him off earlier. And I had sort of said this, I agree, Alex, in that, like, I think it's too. I don't think he's gonna drop Kane. I think the Harry Kane effect. Don't think he's gonna drop him, but I definitely think it's an argument to be had because he's a hassle, and like you said with the penalty things, I think that could maybe play a part into giving him more confidence to sub him off earlier. So if Kane isn't playing as well as he has been, and again, I don't think he's been great at all this tournament. I think he's been really poor actually. Then at 60 minutes, if it's not going well, and again, this is my biggest criticism of Southgate so far, is the like timing of his subs and the like reactiveness rather than the proactiveness. I would love to see that at 60 minutes if it's not going the way we expect. And then Tony gives you that sort of hustle and bustle in behind, sort of penalty box striker like ability. And again, if you pair that with the sort of sub of Palmer onto the pitch, for even say Mainu, but like even not Mainu, like Foden off, Palmer takes that role, or Mainu goes off, Bellingham drops slightly deeper, and you go a bit more attacking if you're hunting that goal. Say we're 1 down. But again, that Palmer like Tony double punch is something that I quite like. The idea of off the bench with that sort of drawing lines off the screen now, with that sort of brave choices and those brave passes between the lines, sort of bouncing them off Tony's feet, Palmer getting in and around the box, Bellingham sort of doing his thing, making mayhem again inside the box crashing. So yeah, let me quickly bring myself off of this screen because now we're going to speak about different screen I've got instead. So I've made about 4 of these actually. Where is it? I think here's the issue of it. Didn't label them. I think it's this one. Yes. Right. So obviously we've got the same sort of team out. Let's go sort of say that's sure. And let's say sort of like this. The pressing structure that they have been using, and especially against France, because this is the game I rewatched today when I was thinking about how they could go around this, is interesting to say the least. And the next slide will will sort of go into why in terms of personnel. But often against France, they were sort of like Griezmann was sort of dragging. I think it was often Reinders with him dropping in and sort of forming that five. And then there was actually quite a bit of space in the middle, but of course that causes a man to sort of a two movements to cause that rift. But if they're going to press in this same structure that I sort of like I said we got from the other day, they allowed France to sort of build into that game. And France, of course, they weren't in this structure. This is how we were set up. If it was to be that same five, or like the same principles of a five back or three, France often quite a few like 2 weeks ago now. Kante was sometimes dropping in. They had both wing backs or full backs actually quite high, so it was actually Kante sort of around here. Maybe he had your two other defenders. And then, like I say, they were sort of dragging players away, and it was more of sort of these wing backs staying out here, pinning these two wide players. Then these two in the middle, again, it was kind of disjointed. You'd have that one press towards the ball player in the pivot, the one in the pivot, and then you'd have this sort of other central midfielder a bit deeper. So this is very similar to what a lot of teams like Spain have done, sort of in this diamondy sort of 4-1-3-2 formation. If you wanted to almost, oh, that's messy, make it like that, and it's a 4-1-3-2. So again, he's sort of dragging him back with that movement. And again, it makes that space in there. And a lot of the time, it was Griezmann sort of like not coming in and sort of getting in into the space to receive the ball. So again, for England, that could be Mainu, or that could end up being Foden dropping in as Mainu sort of makes a run out. Foden takes that space. So it's very sort of fluid between that left side or that right side of who was coming in and getting that space. But there was space behind to receive, and it was actually Griezmann that got a lot of joy from that in that game. So I think that's something England could potentially work to do. Again, whether it would be the same in this sort of structure in a 3-4-3, because like I say, France were playing sort of like it looked like a 3-4-3 at times just because of how Kante was sort of dropping in, picking up the ball, and if it wasn't Kante, it was Rabiot dropping in, picking up the ball. But again, these players are capable. So they can do that as long as these passes are on through the line. Stones lately has started to pick those passes. Rice has started to pick those passes with a bit more meaning and a bit more the word purpose, which will then lead us right. I'm now going to go on to the other screen, which is where we can do a little bit more in depth because I actually want to speak about the names of the players that I think might start. And again, this is very much going off of I've watched the other Netherlands games, but I re-watched for the third time now. Again, this is an issue because I haven't written. I haven't. Please be this one. Yes. So I think there's a good chance that we see the duo of Dumfries and Frimpong again. Again, could be wrong. People are more than allowed to disagree, of course. But I think there's a good chance to see Frimpong starting at right wing again to offer that defensive cover with Dumfries. And again, it doesn't actually make as much sense again because if Trippier does start here, it's not as big of a threat. So you could probably get away with the Dumfries and then having this still be Bergwijn to come inside so that Dumfries can still bomb on. But again, we're talking about how they played against France, and this was France without Kylian Mbappe. So it's something to consider with how they sort of took that game and approached it. And it's probably the biggest game is the biggest game they've had in that sense. So it's one that I'm sort of taking some meaning from. And again, like I said, I rewatched it for a third time, sorry, to really understand that pressing structure and how I think England could get sort of through it and within it. And it sort of brought me to the conclusion of, again, when it gets a bit deeper, they do sort of tend to shuffle into that either 5-3-2 or that that sort of 3-5-2-3. Again, trying to push you wide, not really let you come through the centre. These players will be tight behind the two. Again, these players often will jump out. Dumfries is one where we're going to speak about it. I think that's where you can get at the team if they do start this combo. And again, I've seen a lot of people thinking that Netherlands are probably just going to start a four. And again, it's very possible because they've done that lately. Dumfries has been starting as the right back, other than France. Then he's becoming that right winger. You're having Bergwijn, Simmons, Depay, sort of as that trio in the middle, and Gakpo out on the left. And again, it's worked really well. But if they view us how they did France, they were trying to almost play for that break, that opportunity on the break. And often what they was doing is they were finding, like, they were trying to turn the ball over in these areas by aggressively jumping up to the man, up to the ball side when it was here. And if they could win it back, they pretty much had that sort of space for Frimpong to get into, and that they did get quite a few chances from that. They were unlucky not to score on one occasion from Frimpong quite early, getting into an area around here, and he just sort of scuffed his shot. But something that's quite interesting is when they play in this position, again, Frimpong is actually starting as a right wing. So in the early phases, when it's starting a bit higher up, like from a goal kick, the press, he does actually start a bit higher. So let me figure this out how it was. It will basically be a little bit like that, maybe a little bit deeper on one of them, but he will sort of play with the winger or with the fullback, like higher up, or with the width provider on that side. But then it does end up where they collapse into this five very often with Dumfries as that right centre back. Again, this is off that France game, and this is where I think there's quite a big. Sorry, I was just reading the one of the chats. I'll bring those two up in a second. But this is where I think there's quite a big area to get at them at, which is this side and how they sort of press within that side with both of these two in the team. Because these two together, again, it's going off that one game, but there was quite a few moments where they triggered the press, in my opinion, in the wrong manner, at the wrong time, and it did leave big holes behind that right hand side, often making it almost look like a back two still with Van Dijk and De Vrij. But of course, it wasn't meant to be. Bellingham lets the team down, constant moaning instead of regaining possession and pressing. He's had a few moments where he's moaned and stuff, but I actually think the opposite in terms of pressing and winning back possession. I think he actually covers ground really well, and I think he's actually been quite important in that sense, especially when we was a bit more aggressive the other day. Like even if he isn't the one winning it, I feel like he's often shadowing the players really well to put them into the right areas for the likes of Rice to win it. So I wouldn't quite echo that with Bellingham. I understand he's had a few sort of like poor body language moments this tournament where he's been a bit frustrated visually frustrated. But yeah, I don't think I agree with that fully. Feels worrying. Attacking what is probably our most vulnerable side physically, crossing to Walker's zone, most vulnerable side defensively. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and in the sense of like, the thing is how we're going to set up is no matter what, Walker is basically going to take Gakpo. Is how I see it. Like if in attack, I think like Gakpo and Walker are pretty much going to be man to man tight. In the same way that the other day, Saka was sort of he was responsive, like he had the responsibility of dropping into that five. But what you often saw was Walker just take that man, like man for man, and Saka was actually playing like here, so it did sometimes look a bit asymmetrical, sort of like this in the press. Or the other day against Switzerland, this is. I think this is going to be the same with Gakpo. I think he's going to really like. I think it will literally be a 1v1 of Walker Gakpo, and Ake is very rarely going to get forward from that position. So again, that would actually be Gakpo in this scenario, but not this one, because no, it wouldn't be. That would be Ake, because I haven't put the names on. But obviously, Frimpong is starting as a right winger, so it'd be Dumfries, De Vrij, Van Dijk, Ake. And Ake is not really going to push up, and he is the more defensive of the two. Like he's obviously just going to sit back. So I think the threat is mostly from Gakpo. And again, if Gakpo isn't tracking back, you are going to end up with that Saka 1v1 against Ake a lot of the time. If Saka is tracking back to sort of double up with Gakpo every now and like when he has to in terms of responsibility, and then he's also then got that responsibility, strike forward, get 1v1 with Ake, make something happen. Foden obviously can drag this man, Kane this man, Bellingham's going to be making that run. And this is something we did really well the other day as well, that I've got pictures from. Whenever Saka was in this position, there was a the lining of this that was being created in terms of the movement of the players and just how we force teams back. And again, at point it was Mainu as well, making runs beyond that line and sort of in and around to like push teams right back so that we could actually step onto them. I thought that was really good. I thought we'd like the amount of times we sort of created that overload within that line for the cross was perfect, and it gave Saka that exact area to get 1v1 at his man, which he thrived from. So in that sense, I actually think it could help us to go like this. My main, and this is again where it comes down to how you want to perceive how it will play out, whether because the lineup either way would have the same names, whether Saka is starting here. Let's say like this, whether it's sort of seen as that 4-2-3-1. It's the same names on the team sheet as it to if it's this, for example. So we're not going to know right centre back that De Vrij. So it'd be here it's Dumfries obviously in this like scenario of how I'm putting it, but De Vrij starts as the right centre back with Van Dijk left centre back. So this is where I believe that playing in this shape, especially obviously if we get these two on the pitch together, like I said the other, and again I've seen it once with them two that I've properly looked at in detail with the France game, and it was Bellingham I had over this side for this reason particularly, is often when someone like Griezmann, I think it was Thuram, if the Dutch play a three-man forward line, it would be very troubling to play a three-man back line. And again, though, like with that free, like in possession, like from the get-go, they will start like they pretty much from goal kicks, they do play with that sort of centre forward pin there, two wing backs high. But again, like with this, Shaw would drop back here, Walker would stay there, and again, you'd sort of task Saka with this sort of movement to begin with. Then these players are covering, these players drop off, and again, you're having one shadow, one push. Again, something that you've seen a lot this Euro. So, and then once it forms into the sort of like shape that it would be within that, again, Frimpong would be one of these two that's higher up, but you get the point. Then you've obviously got the five collapsed across the back with Saka. So in terms of three back in that sense, with the three across the front from Netherlands, I think you've got more than enough to cope with that. Again, depending on the like, how you're actually setting them up within that game. So what was he saying? We was saying here. So the way they sort of press, or they did press, in this sort of shape, was Dumfries would sort of step into this area. So often you'd see Thuram was sort of taking Van Dijk and De Vrij. So these two. This is obviously where Thuram was sort of stood at the time. From the game that I analysed of that, this sort of triangle formed itself of these three players, and he was occupying them really well, to be fair. Then you sort of have this wing back and Foden situation where you've got this guy who's got to make the choice, or he pushes in, leaves it here, or again, he's sort of covering where he can do both. Frimpong was often in that sort of area because, like I said, he was actually playing as the right winger. It's just he'd collapsed into that position. So he was often very aware of that side of threat. So, like the actual outside threat. So it was Theo Hernandez at the time, and he was getting forward to show that. And then Griezmann was often playing in that little pocket. And again, he was coming inside. He was basically playing off the left, but he was just coming straight inside. Was to pick up in this area. And again, Dumfries, a lot of the time, would get dragged right into there with Griezmann. And Griezmann was having a field day with this to quite a big extent. He was dragging Dumfries all the way out with him. And again, he was just able to sort of pop it off, get him behind. And they were creating things within this channel here. Because like I say, these two are playing quite tight together. Because again, in the format that they was playing in, it was a 4, not a 5. But they were collapsing into that 5, which was then sort of seeing this sort of disconnect between Frimpong and Dumfries, whether to go to the fullback. Again, if that was a bit higher up, whether he should go here. Dumfries would then jump out. You got a big gap in here to make a run into. It just didn't seem very connected with the two. And I think that this is somewhere where Bellingham could especially thrive in this sort of game, playing off the left, if Dumfries is coming tight with him, because again, he's going to use his body well. He's going to be able to bounce that ball. And then you've got the likes of Mainu joining you to then push on and attack. So I think the way they press, especially if you can flatten them into a 5, if they start Frimpong, and sort of sustain the pressure to the point where you can make them that back 5, I do think they're very much there to be got at. And yes, I agree. And this is true. Like I say, they have been, like, if we're to say without Frimpong, but like as well, like saying the 4-2-3-1, Frimpong is playing as the right winger, like I said, but he's just been collapsing into that 5 back. But when you say with the 4-2-3-1, it hasn't been Frimpong, it's been Dumfries here, and then say this has been let's just say, but let's say who should we say? Who's most likely to start, Marlon, or let's just say Marlon, right? Same thing, like if Marlon's coming inside, and again, it probably actually would be Bergwijn because he started the last 2. But in that 4 that they have been playing, 2 in here, Simmons in here, Depay, Gakpo, Marlon. Then in this scenario, Marlon would drift inside. You sort of become this triangle here. You got your width provider in Gakpo, width provider in Dumfries. And then again, you got that 3 sort of across the back, Ake, 2 pivot, just like that. So that's how it could be. Frimpong was, yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, he was effectively a right winger, and then in out of possession, he was initially pressing as the right winger, and then dropping and collapsing into that back 5. But yeah, you're correct. Like I say, he was playing as that right winger. So again, if they was to set up in this manner with Marlon or Bergwijn, which is what you've actually seen lately, then like I say, this is where the likes of Marlon and Simmons, no, yeah, Simmons, because that would be Depay. Depay, obviously, he's trying to and again, he'll drop in sometimes. Simmons would actually take that role, so it could be one or the other. These players could get dragged out into those like sort of dangerous areas, which is where you probably want it to be. You're trusting on the sort of tandem that they're doing it within. I've just seen you've written in the chat, Travis. I actually missed that. I'll get to that in a sec. But that matters a lot in terms of, obviously, if they both are sort of dragged out at similar timings, again, it's impossible because it will be the ball side that pushes. So if it's here, Walker pushes, Gurhey sits, and you've sort of got that cover there. Ball side here, Gurhey. It's like this. And again, like I said, it would probably be the 5 if Southgate sticks with the 5. But like you say, that sort of makes that 5 across the front. Again, one of these can push, the other one can sort of sit. And you sort of make that sort of shape where you've got like your one up front with Kane, he's just sort of forcing the ball one way or another. One of these 2 of the pivot can push up and actually, oh, what have I done there? Whoops. Oh, here we go. My bad. I think I accidentally clicked the sidebar of my. There we go. Of my mouse, which took me back a page. Let's go on to this. Not sure if you've covered already, but think one source of encouragement could be Walker's strength in 1v1s will really nullify the threat of isolating Gakpo, which they've relied on so heavily. And yeah, I did. That's exactly what I think too. Like I said, I think Saka is going to sort of be there as sort of an extra. Like I say, it depends how you see it as a principle, because you could say he's starting as a right wing back, but even if he's starting as a right winger, it's more so just for that double up potential, whilst Walker is making that. I think that duel is going to be key with Walker and Gakpo. And then, like you say, you got Stones, who's going to be probably occupied with Depay quite a lot. One of these 2 that's going to be filling in, sort of following Simmons, probably Rice, if he's sort of playing towards that that right hand side on Rice's left side. And again, then you've got the likes of Gurhey sort of free to sort of jump up, make that 2v1 battle. And again, he's been very good in those duel winning incidents. So the 1v1 ability of Rice to nullify Gakpo is very much a big thing. And then plus Saka is defensively proficient enough to effectively track Ake. And again, something else I I said as well. So Travis, I 100% agree. Ake's not going to make these runs too often. When he does, like you say, Saka's going to be in and around this area, and then even more so if they are playing in that again without, let's say, without Frimpong. Let's say it's like I said earlier, so it's Marlon, and it's sort of more like this. And this is Ake. One, he's not really going to push forward, and two, if it does break, you have basically got yourself a situation of Saka's going to get forward and he can find himself in these 1v1 isolations quite quickly. Oh, where's the arrow? Quite quickly here with Ake. So I personally think that if we stay in this same setup of collapsing into a 5, I think that works best because I don't think either way Saka would be the one with the key responsibility of Gakpo. If it was the case where Gakpo was on, like Saka was on Gakpo and Walker was the man in here, that would be slightly more worried because obviously once Gakpo gets ahead of steam, if he can beat his man and get into this area against Walker, he's already got Walker where he wants him a few yards off the ball. And again, Gakpo's been brilliant this tournament at sort of finding that inside, coming inside, and then he's sort of had the choice this tournament of sometimes he's making that shot, making that sort of inside curl, and then sometimes he's mixing it up really well, keeping players guessing because a lot of the time he is going across and then actually firing it back towards this bottom corner. He's been very close with a few of those strikes. So I think the sheer variance of his strikes have been perfect. I think it's important that, like I say, it's Walker that is sort of stepping out and being very direct with how he's approaching Gakpo. Saka is the double up, and then again, you're going to have one of these two, probably Rice being the more conservative, and then Mainu sort of being part of that press at times. So, like I say, Shaw would be here. Gurhey, you've got Rice, you can sort of jump to here, and then you've also got Rice. Or, like I say, it depends on the ball side. Ball side could be Mainu, and they could sort of shadow like this. So it depends. You're trying to keep them in your shadow for the passing aspects of it. You're trying to keep them sort of between the two, so you've got multiple options of who can jump. But again, I think that diamond type from pivot, so having one jump higher, one sort of staying and around, would be key in this sense. And I agree with pretty much all you said about Gakpo and Walker. So that's where I'm at with the lineup. Again, there's a massive chance that they don't do what I think they are, which is what I've said. There's a big chance they stick with what's been working, which we got up on screen. They make that Berg Vine, and like I say, they do that. But I have the feeling that we're going to see Frimpong. For that reason, again, it's mainly because we saw it against France. That's mainly where I'm going from with it. And I could be very naive to think that they're just going to do the same thing again. But it's Coman. And I think his game plan will be similar because they got a 0-0 from France without Mbappe, yes. And they did ride their luck at times. But they also found chances by hitting them on the break. And I do have a feeling they're going to set up this way. So that's why I sort of wanted to mention both ways of setting up in this video or this stream. And again, like I said earlier, sort of wanted to make those points of Konsa or Gurhey, Trippier or Shaw if he's fit, the Tony factor, the Palmer factor, even Eze, like I say, Trent. Wanted to sort of make those points because this is what I think I would start. Gurhey back in, Shaw start, Palmer from the bench, Tony from the bench. Like I said, that would be my double punch. I would almost be looking if it's 0-0 at 60 or you're 1-0 down. I'm looking to make that double punch sub, bang bang. Both of those get on the pitch, and that for me is how I'd be looking at the game. Because then the other thing you've got to take into account, if we're now talking about subs, is the idea that's not spelled correctly. Is the idea of this guy, who I think could cause us quite a few issues, and they did that very quickly against Turkey. If people remember how quickly they made that sub, pretty sure it was at half time. Again, I've had a few drinks at this point, so I have watched the game back, but struggling to remember because I was a few after the England game, put it that way. But I think Weghorst could cause us a few issues in terms of like putting that ball into the box, and again, you've got a smaller Gurhey, Stones, who he's decent enough in those duels, but he's not exactly a dominator in those duels like a Maguire. And then Walker. So it is more so with when Weghorst comes onto the pitch, it is more so going to be about getting men around that ball. Again, not to that extent, but having many players within close proximity to sort of hound him out and make him make mistakes. And again, this is where someone like Weghorst in the box effectively creates the chances for these sort of pocket players just by his chaos and having to have players that are trying to get in and around him to stop things happening. So Weghorst is probably actually my biggest sort of like, how are we going to deal with it, that I've got in mind, like from the actual get go. And if we set up in the way that, like I said, with that five, I actually think we're probably going to be able to push them back into that flat five more often than not. And I do actually think we'll be able to get the run of the game by doing that and sort of control the ball a little bit. Again, occasion matters. How are the players going to, like, if are they going to falter under the occasion? Are they going to hold on to the ball long enough with enough confidence on it? Again, if we're sloppy, then that obviously defies the point that we're sustaining possession, because if we keep losing it, we're not going to continue to sustain that possession and get the run of the game. But like I say, my biggest question that I'm still trying to think is Weghorst. And then so hey David, yeah, no worries, mate. Watch from the start. Again, I think it starts about 10 minutes in. Skip to like 10 minutes in when I actually get going with the video and the actual commentary on it. But yeah, thanks for joining us as always. Especially if Manu's got how to do this. If Walker stays close to Gakpo, even out wide, when it create big space between Stones, Walker, potentially dangerous for Simmons. So, and this is how we sort of set up the other day. So this is obviously going. Let's make this Gakpo. And this is, of course, going of how they sort of set up against Switzerland. But it did often look like this, with Saka sort of inside. So Gakpo was sort of coming here, and sort of Walker was ready to make that jump out to sort of make to that wide position. Saka was sort of covering that inside fullback if he used to drift inside. So again, it was like Albisha. And again, he was sort of sat in here. So again, he's sort of there for that double up potential. And again, you're gonna like Ake. He's not gonna follow in that sense. He'd like hovering around here to try and keep that rest defense position and to try and like, so the ball can't break and he can sustain possession really well. Because again, he did that really well against for Gakpo's first goal of the tournament. I think it was first game of the group stages. He did that, but he's not going to be too much of a threat to moving Saka from here. And then, like I say, if you got Frimpong further forward, that's going to be Shaw's man. Then you've got your two inside pocket players. So you can have Stones probably pretty much occupied by whoever that man is. So it's going to be a 1v1 duel. So that in itself is risky, because obviously if they spin him, then they're away. But it's going to be a big game for him, because it's going to be Depay, and then sometimes it becomes Simmons whilst Depay drops in. But sort of that rotating man, that's going to be on Stones to sort of win that duel. And then, like I say, it's going to be more to do with. So there is obviously a spare man in here, but it depends how deep, if he's in this deeper area to sort of like facilitate to get Gakpo into a 1v1 position, then Saka's going to come into here. And he, like I say, he sort of like did that the other day against Switzerland. And if he doesn't, then you're going to have Mainu and Bryce a bit deeper, where you can have sort of this double up here. And then you've got Mainu sort of here. And then again, you're sort of giving them a bit more of the ball. But like I said, I think if you sustain enough of the ball, I think this is going to be okay. And again, England did drop into this sort of that's a circle, sort of 5-4-1 at times with Saka here. So it was a thing that they did with Bellingham and Foden dropping off. It's just interesting to see. It's more to do with how they set up. Like I say, I think if Frimpong starts, I think that differs to how we play. And I think Metafoot will just put it here. 4-2-3-1 versus 3-4-2-1 makes no sense. You're giving up the mid and not forcing any attacking pressure on the defence. And again, this is something that I don't necessarily want. Like, it's not necessarily as much as me, but it's more so what Southgate has set out this tournament in terms of attacking intent and putting the defence under pressure and actually putting the ball under pressure. It hasn't actually happened as much as it probably should this tournament. So this sort of like again, and we was more aggressive against Switzerland. That has to be said. Rice was picking his moments really well. Even Mainu jumping the route, it was happening more. But And again, this is why Saka's so important. Is if they like when the lineups do come out and you realise like Dumfries, you can plan obviously for it to be two different things because they did this against France, and then every other game it's not been. So you know if say if the lineup comes out and this is Marlon, like I said earlier, and that is Dumfries playing higher, then all of a sudden you have got a situation where oh, okay. From a footballing perspective, yeah, I agree. I agree. I do agree with that, and that's why I think it's important for Saka because you can make that adjustment without making personnel adjustments. Because, like I say, if that then becomes Dumfries, that's then Marlon. That's you've sort of got a 3-2-5 like this. Then again, Walker's in the 4. Make that more of a 4. Rice and Mainu have got their half space men. You got a 2v1 here. 1v1 there. Again, he'll be nice and high, as will he. And then, again, you sort of end up with what has sort of looked like a narrow 4-4-2/4-2-3-1. So you do end up with, again, though, you are giving them the ball with the way that we've been pressing because, especially in the group stage games, when we were pressing in this manner, again, this could be Foden, this could be Bellingham, but let's just put it like this for now, for argument's sake. It was often very lazy in the sense of we'll sort of let that ball go, get punched into here, sort of allow that to get in there. And then often they were turning out. Kane was already bypassed out the game. Bellingham was slightly too far away to sort of make that jump, or Foden. And again, they were just finding that sort of run of the game through the middle because Rice and Trent at the time were so deep here. They weren't being aggressive enough. It wasn't like a 1-for-1 like that diamond that we spoke about. It wasn't one push, one stay. It was both sat off here, allow the half space players to pretty much pin you there, make runs beyond you. Even if they do, you're sort of holding that narrow edge space. And again, sometimes it even looked like a 6. Like they were following that deep, Trent and Rice. And again, it just managed. They like teams that we shouldn't have been being pinned back against were pinning us in, and we just weren't getting any of the game that we actually wanted. And of course, yeah, we kept some clean sheets and we kept like we were decent, but again, it was more so the toothlessness of the other teams than it was the actual defensive ability of us, which again it was good. Like there was some good performances. Gurhey, I think, had a really good tournament. Rice, I think, picked it up in defensive manners, especially I thought he was really good against Switzerland, and even on the ball, I thought he was better against Switzerland. But it's just been too lazy in the press. Like I say, that has been far too easy to get to round these 4, however you want to put it. So in the 5, I preferred the fact that with that extra man, sort of as Walker here, Walker sort of was allowed to be aggressive, and then Saka was there to cover. Or Rice was allowed to be aggressive because he knew Mainu would sort of sit, and you'd still have that sort of 5 here to protect. Like it just seemed like having that extra man meant that Southgate had allowed those players to make that jump a little bit quicker. And exactly that is how it is. The game changes as we go, and that's why having versatile players like Saka is important because at one point they can be playing as a wing back. At one point they're still playing with an extra bit of defensive responsibility, but they're very high, isolating them very high up the pitch. Again, this happened with Eze when he came onto the pitch, essentially playing as a left wing back. It was up here. Like obviously he is playing as a left wing back and he has that extra little responsibility to tuck in out of possession. But if you're controlling the game as you want to with these players high up the pitch, sustaining possession, like we say, these wing backs are here anyway. They're providing the width. Trippier and Saka against Switzerland were the 2 highest players on the heat map the other day. They on the average positions, they were the 2 highest players on the pitch. Like I say, it often actually looked. The heat map sort of looked like this. That's sort of how the heat map looked for England. So I had all 3 of these guys in this zone. And again, I think that is because, like I said earlier, they were utilising a little bit better that movement of Kane deep, Bellingham in. It was more so the second Kane started to make that movement, Bellingham, even if he knew he wasn't going to get the ball, would make that movement because it just, again, it causes disruption in the defence. And those sort of movements are important, even if you're not going to get the ball. And just the height of those fullbacks, it did really help. And again, I think as much as it shouldn't be that case because you can make it do this in and out of possession in any different way. There's ways of making it that these players are the highest on the pitch and they're pinning players back. But it just feels like with Southgate, this is the way you get it with the actual five at the back. It seems like that's the way he's going to do it. So if we want to see that again, I think we have to see the five at the back. And again, I think that's going to be very important to see whether it's Dumfries or Frimpong. So, been going for nearly an hour. That's pretty much what I wanted to touch on in this video. Again, I just wanted to sort of have a chat about England, see what people thought about the sort of sub decisions. If I'll go for another few minutes if anybody has anything particular they want to quickly speak on. If not, then we'll end the stream there. But I am going to be staying blindly hopeful. Not sure if everybody's in the same boat, but that's the point of this, isn't it? It's the point of us being fans and being sort of having that unity. I just love it in that sense. Like, even if it does feel like blind optimism at times, we're in the semi-final. This is the points now. Like, moments matter. Like, this game will be decided on a nice edge. It could be a Bellingham overhead kick again. It could be Harry Kane finally steps up. This is how things are going to be. Like, at tournament football, it's decided with those extra sort of little niche moments, especially at the highest level. And I think it's worth dreaming, personally. Most football, I enjoyed that. Wouldn't agree on all of it, but for a first time watcher, it's been entertaining. Well done, thank you, mate. Thanks a lot for joining the stream. Like I said again, it's not necessarily how I would do things, but I just think this is how I kind of think it might be based on watching the France game and reanalyzing that earlier this morning. And the second thing is, again, like I say, I think you're more likely to get the shape that has worked out of Southgate within a five back than he is to tweak his four back and make the correct adjustments that we want, is how I sort of see it. A lot of reliance on 1v1 duels and individual brilliance. England have that in plenty. And that's kind of it, isn't it? So I'm going to leave it like, at this stage of the competition, if you can coach your way to a fairly even game, and again, you're relying on these 1v1 duels and you're relying Walker can stop Gakpo. And again, if you've got the confidence in these players and then you've got the game breakers that we have, like you say, England have that in abundance. We probably have the most game breakers in a single team at the tournament. You've got this triangle. You've got Palmer off the bench. You've got Saka. Saka literally just did it. Like, Saka's not even, like, the first few players that you think of because they're the inside men and they're, like, the ones that you're sort of forcing into the team are here. Saka's just shown his game-breaking ability. Palmer, the season he's having and the braveness he comes on with. Tony's already had moments. Yes, he's not been the game changer, but he's had big moments. Trent, another one. If you're bringing him on at right back or if you're bringing him on further forward to play as a wing back or as a centre mid, he's the one. He's going to pick that pass. He's going to do something. These are game-breaking players. You have a lot of them. If you can stay 50-50 in a game like we have, especially at this point, yes, it's been draining. Yes, it's been hard to watch at times. But it's the semi-finals now, and you're playing against one of the better sides. Again, they've maybe not shown it 100% this tournament, although I actually think they've been slightly better than some people are giving them credit for, just in terms of basic structure. But if you can keep it close, you've got the game changers in this squad. And it's well worth speaking about in that sense. The reliance that you can have on that, like we did Bellingham, like we did Saka. Like I said, it's not great for the heart rate and how late it's going in games and the stress, but at this point in the tournament, I don't care how it happens. Win that semi-final, get to the final, and then again, come the final, you're looking again to see how you can get that slight upper hand to try and have a 50-50 game and go from there. Game breaker will probably be mobility up front, which we have been lacking, as stated before, not even clinical passes, too many carriers. Yeah, and like I say, and this is, if it's a 0-0, this is where that double punch comes in, because exactly what you're saying, let's say it is Foden that makes way. Let's just say it was this, for example. Bit more mobility up front, causing a little bit more chaos in the box. Brave passer between the lines. That's your double punch. There they are. the exact tandem that you have just mentioned, that's them. Which is why I think Watkins in if Harry is injured. Missing prime Rashford or Sterling. Rashford is one I would have brought to the tournament, but again, Gordon, you have a pretty you did have that available to you in Gordon, to offer that similar width provided that you wanted on the left, but you just didn't use him. And again, Rashford, I agree. I would have said it at the time as well. So yeah, but I think Gordon should have got a better run at the start of the tournament. I think it would have been really helpful. Again, the game that we're playing now, this game, I actually don't think it's the right time now for Gordon. I also don't think it's the right game for him. But again, he makes things happen. He is dangerous. So he's one of those players I really like Gordon. I wish he did get more of a run. And like I say, Watkins in, I don't necessarily disagree because I know what you mean, like in terms of running in behind. But I would go Tony if you can do one or the other, just to cause that sort of box, a little bit more box presence, a little bit more chaos in and around. Bring back Lineker. Bring back Lineker. Wow. Do you think you'd do a decent? Do you think you'd do a better job than Kane in these conditions right now? Lineker today versus Kane today, not Lineker back in the day. Today, Gordon is good, but Rashi and Sterling at their best are game winners and can carry a team on their back. Agreed. Sterling has had, again, being a Chelsea fan, I don't think he's been good enough to have earned the call up. I get trusting players that have done it before, but again, something clearly wasn't right between them. So if anyone, for me, it would have been Rashford. And I agree, Rashford has that game changer ability within him. So yeah, probably Rashford. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, true. So I think I'm going to end it there. Thank you for everybody that's joined. Let me quickly refresh to see what we're at in terms of likes and stuff, because we've actually had a decent viewing for an England stream, because usually my Chelsea streams do far better. And yeah, where is it? There, I agree. Euro 2020 level Sterling. He's the best player at the tournament. So for us, but yeah, thanks everybody for joining. We're on 10 likes. If we can smash that, if anybody hasn't hit the like button that is in here, please do, because that will help it as it becomes a video to push the video in the algorithm. Like I say, this is done better than I expected for a video that isn't Chelsea. Big up, subbed and liked. Thanks for the comments, and that is exactly what I want to do on this channel when I do analysis streams. I want to sort of engage with who there is. I'm going to try and get some people on. Again, Alex joined today, Travis joined today. Both very well plugged and know exactly what they're talking about. So they're the sort of people I want to bring in. I've got a few other friends that are in this industry and like data analysts and do this sort of thing. And then even just people that sort of like content creators that are on that level. Again, I think it's interesting to speak to people. I love speaking to people in the comment section and getting their thoughts and ideas. On the thing we're talking about, I don't want it to just be me sat here telling you guys what I think. I want it to be interactive and informative to what you guys want to know. So reach out if needs be. 100% man, will do. I'll check out your chat if that's your channel. I will definitely check that out once I come off stream now. Alex, as we see there with the eyes, hopefully me and Alex can do a stream at some point. I'm going away next week, so after that we will try and get some guests on. That's the idea. I've been speaking to a few other people today that have said that they're more than happy to come on as well. So we'll be trying to take it to another level and trying to take it further than Chelsea, because I don't want it to become pigeonholed to Chelsea. Like I say, I will cover everything Chelsea. When the season starts, I will be doing loads of Chelsea tactical analysis, videos, streams. Every time Chelsea's had a player, every time things like that, I will be covering a lot of it because that is who I support. But I also want to do a couple of streams, like 1 or 2 streams a week about a certain team and analysing a certain game and a certain player who's in the, like, I want to make it more broad and sort of try to expand slowly and gradually. So yes, thank you everybody for joining. Drop a like if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.